Do you have this constant feeling that something bad could happen on your fertility journey? You try to get excited about the possibility of this cycle being successful, but at the same time, you don't want to get your hopes up. If you just feel like you're going through the motions, getting left behind, and struggling to enjoy the things that you used to, then this is an episode you need to hear. Being in a stress response for weeks, months, or years as you're trying to conceive wreaks havoc on your nervous system, and you end up living in a constant state of survival mode. But what does this mean for your fertility, and how do you get out of it? On today's episode, I want to show you how to recognize when you're in this state and exactly how you can start moving through it. Welcome to your journey to fertility. This is the podcast that blends science with spirit to give you all the tools you need as you navigate your fertility journey. I'm your host, Jennifer Edmonds, and for the last 15 years, I've been helping women on their journeys to motherhood and beyond. I believe that combining the latest scientific research along with the best energetic and mindset practices will help you to avoid putting your life on hold and bring you closer to your baby. Each week, you'll learn ways to support your fertility and trust your body so that you can stop stressing that you'll never have your baby and finally walk your path to motherhood. This is the Your Journey to Fertility podcast. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. I am really excited. Maybe excited is the wrong word, but just really passionate about the topic that we're going to talk about today because it is, I think, the underlying current of everything that we're going through when we're struggling to have our families. And this episode is not an easy one to listen to. This isn't, a super fun or lighthearted topic, but it is, I think, the most important thing that you will do on this whole journey. Now, as I record this, I just need to point out it is almost summertime in Sydney, and I'm recording this at night. Everything in Australia just goes crazy at nighttime in summer, and I don't know if you can hear out my window, but the possums are going, the crickets are going. So if there are a whole bunch of weird background noises, I do apologize, but I will stick with this. So before we begin, I just want to say that of all of the work that I do with my fertility students, this is the most important. And don't get me wrong, I love all of the spiritual stuff that we talk about and, connecting to your spirit babies and really listening to your intuition and all of that amazing stuff. But without this work, none of that is possible. You can't even begin to manifest the life that you want if you are living in a constantly dysregulated state with a dysregulated nervous system. Nothing else will make sense and you won't be able to move past that point. I didn't know I was in survival mode for so long when I was trying to conceive. I hid it really well. I would go to work, I would go out and meet my friends, I would go about my day. It didn't look like anything was going on. On the outside, everything looked normal, but really if you dug a little bit just below the surface, there were so many little pebbles that my body was throwing me, these little signs, and some of them not even so little. I had chronic insomnia. I just loved getting home and not wanting to go out anywhere. And I know for a lot of us, that's what we want to do anyway, but I've always been quite social and always looked forward to, meeting up with people after work, but I lost the desire to do any of that. I would get triggered so much by everything and I would just lose my shit over the smallest things like traffic or an appointment got mixed up or someone didn't text me back, like things that just are insignificant. I would absolutely lose my mind and they would completely ruin my day. But after a while, these things just became normal. It was just the way I was living. But this is a problem. And not just because it makes your life miserable, but it has a huge impact on your overall health and your fertility too. When you are in a constant state of survival or a constant state of stress, this interferes with all of the beautiful synchronistic processes that happen naturally within your body. If you are constantly stressed, your body is going to prioritize either getting you out of that situation, either running, fighting, or freezing. And we'll talk about this a little bit more in the episode. But when your body prioritizes those things, what it does is it sends blood flow to your extremities, your arms and your legs, getting you ready to run or to fight. And it shuts down a lot of those non-essential processes that aren't required for immediate survival. So things like digestion. If you are running for your life away from a tiger, you don't need to digest your lunch. If you are trying to escape from someone who's chasing you down a dark alley, you don't need to solve a complex maths problem. I come up with that example, but you don't need that higher order critical thinking. So that rational thinking brain tends to shut down as well. It affects things like your immune system and, of course, your reproductive system. All of these things that we don't need when we are faced with an imminent threat. Your brain has this little threat detector dude called the amygdala. The amygdala is always on the lookout for signs of safety or danger within your environment. And this happens at every moment of the day, from the moment you were born until you take your very last breath. Your amygdala will be constantly on the lookout. But the problem with this guy is that he doesn't understand the difference between a real, an imminent threat, or a perceived threat. So imagine you're at the zoo and you've just visited the tiger enclosure, and then someone says, hey, the tigers have escaped and they're now running wild through the zoo. That is an immediate threat to your survival, and you are in danger and you are going to run for your life, hide, freeze, whatever. Probably not fight the tiger because you'll lose, but that's a big threat, and your brain is going to do whatever it can to get your body to survive. But then in another sense, imagine a memory comes up. You have a physical reaction to something like a hospital visit or a doctor's office. You're not in physical danger, but your brain doesn't know that. Your brain will associate some kind of memory or something that it has seen or heard or smelt in your environment that reminds you of a state or a situation where you didn't feel safe. And this is because when we go through a traumatic event, your brain is literally stuck in the past. And memory, sight, sound, smells, they can all trigger you right back to that moment. When I first raise this issue of trauma with my students, they get confused. They think that what they've been through, and I was absolutely in this position as well, they don't think what they've been through is traumatic enough, because we tend to associate trauma with things like victims of abuse, or returning from war, or going through a natural disaster or a car accident, or all of these big things. And of course they are hugely traumatic, but that isn't how trauma works. Trauma is basically anything that was too much for your system to handle, and the brain got overwhelmed and couldn't complete the stress cycle. So to explain how that works, I'm going to give you an example. Imagine you've got a positive pregnancy test, but a few weeks later, you start bleeding. You freak out, your flight response is activated, you're racing to the doctor or the hospital, you're so desperate to find out what's going on, you're panicking, you finally get into an ultrasound room and your baby is fine. The bleeding stops, the doctor tells you this is super common in early pregnancy, you see on the monitor the baby's heartbeat is fine, and you can return to a place of regulation. You know you and your baby are safe. You might have a massive cry or need to hug your partner or find any other ways to release this sort of pent-up energy that you've had from these moments of panic. But this is a complete stress cycle. You've had a threat, a response. Now you know that you are within safety. Then you return to regulation. But what if your baby wasn't okay? What if this same situation happened, as it did to me, and I'm sure so many of you listening, and it ended up in a loss? your worst fears are confirmed. And you can't run, you can't fight, and you can't even shut down, because you just have to go through the motions then of pregnancy loss and what's dictated to you by someone else, your doctor, the hospital, whatever that might be. And here's where the stress cycle gets broken. You are literally stuck in time, and your brain doesn't know the difference between when this has happened and the memory of when this has happened. So every time you think about that moment, you see, you hear, you smell something or someone that reminds you of that situation, you are right back there. Your life isn't in danger, but your brain doesn't know this. And this can happen in so many ways. Even a negative pregnancy test month after month after month can be traumatic. You know, the things people say to you when you're struggling with infertility or pregnancy loss, you know, you're being constantly triggered by those around you, and it is a lot, and you shouldn't discount any of it. Now, before we get to some of the ways that you can start helping yourself out of survival mode, I want to mention one other thing that I think is really important. When we think about therapy, especially in the Western world and recovering from difficult experiences, usually we think about talk therapy or counseling, psychology, and this is helpful. Don't get me wrong, it is a very important part of our healing process. Talking about what we've been through, especially with trained therapists, helps you to intellectualize what you've been through and to make sense of it and to help you feel less alone. Like I said, it's a crucial part of the healing process, but it is not the complete part of how we can heal. Talk therapy cannot completely regulate your nervous system. It can't cure things like racing thoughts, apathy, this low level of anxiety that you have constantly. And here's why. Talk therapy uses the prefrontal cortex. This is the thinking brain, which sits right at the front. This is where rational thinking, reasoning, understanding, they all reside. But your autonomic nervous system is below the cortical thinking brain. It is not activated when you're talking. So it just literally doesn't understand what you're saying. It doesn't understand words. It would be like having a conversation with someone who speaks a completely different language to you. You could talk and talk and talk all day, but that person is not going to understand. Your body is not going to understand that you're safe. The more you tell it, if it doesn't feel that it is. So this is why when you tell yourself, I just need to calm down. I just need to relax a little bit more. I'm back at the hospital. It's okay. I'm safe. Your body doesn't hear you. It doesn't work. And it is exhausting. And you get frustrated the more that you go through this cycle and this process. It's like, well, what is wrong with me? Why isn't anything working? And the reason is that what we need in addition to these talk therapies are somatic therapies. Basically anything to do with the physical body or the language of your physical body. And that's what somatic work is. Think of it this way. If you want to just imagine you don't know how to swim, you want to learn how to swim, and you go to a class and they open out the books and like, okay, here's the pool, you jump in, here are all the strokes that you can do, here's how you hold your breath, here's how you float. I don't know, it's been a long time since I learned to swim. You can read all through this. You can listen to the person talking about swimming. You can go, okay, no, I get it, I understand. But are you ever going to be able to swim unless you get in the pool and actually move your body through water? Feel what it's like to be in that water. How do my shoulders feel when I do particular strokes? How does it feel when I'm starting to sink and I need to come up for air? It is a completely different experience thinking and talking about something versus your body experiencing it. Okay, so how do we start to get ourselves out of survival mode? The answer lies within somatic work. So instead of thinking, feeling, listening to your body, and here are some of the ways that you can do this. I've got 5 things that I want to mention today. These are some of the simplest ways that I find we can start with, but they're not easy. Don't get me wrong. They're not quick fixes. They're not things that you can do once or twice and have worked through completely. And different things work for different people. So you might find that some of these work really well for you, some don't, and we are completely individual, and that's absolutely fine. So the first step is awareness. I've talked about this on previous podcasts, and this is the part that I can't really help you with. You need to come to this realization all on your own. And maybe like me, you pretend that everything is fine. You don't notice that this low level of anxiety is having such a huge impact on your life. Like I mentioned, it was having on mine when I was struggling to conceive. But if your journey of trying to have your family has completely taken over your life, your thoughts, and your ability to live the way that you want, then I think you're already there. Start becoming aware of your triggers. What are the things that upset you the most? Is it people? Is it situations? Is it something that you see, something you hear? Is it being in certain places? Start becoming aware of the things that really upset you. And when those situations happen, take notes of your physical responses. And I like to get my students to physically write this down, whether it's in a journal or just on the notes app in your phone. But how does it feel in your body? Always come back to your body. Do you notice your heart is racing? Are you getting hot? Are you feeling agitated? You can't sit still. Start becoming aware and questioning, getting curious as much as you can. The second thing you need to do is prioritize yourself. And this sounds really easy, but no, really, you need to put yourself first. And it might be uncomfortable. And the reason that this is a somatic practice is because putting yourself first is going to remind you of your own physical sense of safety. So whether that means taking a break from friendships or relationships that are really upsetting or triggering you. And I spoke about this on the podcast a few weeks ago, but providing clear boundaries first with yourself and then communicating them to others. And you might feel bad about it and they might not accept that. And that's really common, but it's okay. Create routines. Your nervous system loves predictability. Go to bed earlier and at the same time every night. Have a wind down routine. Eat breakfast at the same time each day, preferably within like that half-hour stage of waking up. Get out for a walk every day. Just find consistent things that you do each and every day to help your body know that it's safe. And always plan something to look forward to. Like it could be anything, a massage or a date with your partner at your favorite restaurant. Make time for stuff you enjoy with absolutely zero guilt and really feel that excitement and that joy in your body. We also need to find a balance of healthy stress versus chronic stress. And we need stress. We need our sympathetic nervous system, or we would not have lasted as humans for very long. Imagine back in the day as, our ancestors were out hunting and gathering and a lion was coming to chase them. If your sympathetic nervous system didn't kick in, you just thought, oh, I'll be fine. I'll continue, looking for my wild berries here in the bush. No, the lion would eat you. So we need our survival response. But there are ways to manage this with healthy stress. So, for example, gentle exercise, learning something new, enrolling in a new course that's sort of stretching your brain power and really challenging you. Find little ways to get into that healthier stress response. And just reminding your brain and your body that a healthy amount of stress is actually beneficial, and it can start to learn the difference between that healthy stress versus the overwhelming stress. Number 3 is to come back to your breath. Oh, I could talk about this one for hours. It is so important, but here is why. When you are in that survival mode, when you're in a stress response, you have no control over all of that. This is a system that has developed over hundreds of millions of years. We have evolved so incredibly to the point that your entire body in a fraction of a second will put you into a stress response when it perceives danger. You are no match for hundreds of millions of years of evolution. But what we can do, like I said previously, is come to that state of awareness, know what those signals are in your body, start becoming in tune with when you are activated, and then we come back to your breath. Because whilst you don't have control over all of those automatic functions, the one thing you have control of at every moment of the day is your breath. And when we are stressed, we tend to take very quick, shallow breaths. We don't get a lot of air in. We're not using the full capacity of our lungs. But you can override that stress response. You can kind of hack your nervous system basically by changing your breath. So slow, long, deep breaths, especially your exhale. Just take a breath with me now. Full breath in. And then a really slow breath out. And you can already, I can already feel in my body, like my voice is a bit slower. I feel like I'm just ever so slightly more calm from just a single breath. And this is something that you are going to want to get into the practice of doing regularly. And I think it's also important to note that doing breath work to activate that relaxation response or to come out of fight or flight isn't just important when you're in the moment of being triggered. It's really important to do when you're regulated as well, because it reminds your body that breath work is such a wonderful way to come back to that state. So coming into a practice, if it's end of the day, if that works for you, maybe first thing in the morning, take 5 minutes to really focus on those slow, deep breaths. And this sets you up for either a more regulated day ahead or a better night's sleep. And again, that consistency, that routine is the way that it's going to really start to help you. Number 4 is to check in with your body. There are so many ways to do this, but think about when was the last time you really sat in silence and asked how your body was feeling. When you get triggered, how does that show up in your body? Where do you feel it? What does it feel like? And just as important, where do you feel comfort or safety in your body? For example, I always feel relief when I focus on my hands. I tend to feel heaviness and tightness in my chest and my throat when I'm anxious or I get triggered by something. But if I focus on my hands, I can shift that feeling elsewhere or use touch with my hands on other parts of my body, which is actually a practice called havening, to create those feelings of safety. That might work for you, but start getting in tune with your body. Where are those areas that feel just a little more comfortable, a little easier, and really bringing awareness to those areas when you are feeling stressed or triggered. So once a day, at least, I would say, practice getting quiet, scanning your body, asking your body if she has anything that she wants you to know. You would be amazed at what comes up. Now, the last thing I want to mention, number 5, is to find support. And honestly, I think this could be the most important part because, like I said, this work is a lot and this journey is a lot. And it is so hard to know where to start. But when you work with someone who understands where you're coming from, you have the benefit of this beautiful thing called co-regulation. Now, your nervous system can regulate when you are present with and in contact with someone who is calm and regulated themselves, and most importantly, someone you feel safe with. You might find that there are certain people in your life that you just feel better by being around them. Maybe it's your partner, hopefully it's your partner, at least one of those people is. And just sitting with them, being close to them, having a hug from them really changes your whole demeanor. And there is a very scientific reason for this. Your nervous system loves being in the presence of someone who is regulated, and you can kind of steal their regulation in for lack of a better way of saying it. So finding someone who, it doesn't matter exactly who it is. It could be a somatic therapist, a trauma-informed yoga teacher, a coach, a Reiki master. The right practitioner is the one that you decide works for you. And it can be kind of like dating. You can shop around. Doesn't matter if someone comes highly recommended. You will know if you want to work with that person. You will always feel safe and supported around them. Thank you for listening to the end of this episode. I'm so passionate about this work, and it's because I found this path to healing so many years into my journey, and I want you to find it well before I did. And I want you to know that you don't have to struggle. There are so many ways you can support yourself, and no matter what your journey to parenthood looks like, you can just make your life so much easier along the way and make your journey of pregnancy and new motherhood easier too. The next episode of the podcast, I am so excited to bring you because we are going to continue talking about this topic with best-selling author and infertility trauma expert, Parajat Deshpande. She will take you on a deep dive of how to work through anxiety and just go through all of these incredible somatic healing tools with you. I got a little bit fangirl when speaking to her on this podcast, so I cannot wait for you to hear it and listen to all that she has to share. So I hope to have you back next week for that episode. But until then, I am sending you all my wishes as you continue your own journey to fertility. The most common thing I hear from students who are on their fertility journey is that the stress of trying to conceive has taken over their life. Your days end up being filled with endless appointments, navigating pregnancy announcements. You're trying to eat right, take all your supplements, and it is all you think about from the moment you wake up. I designed the Element Fertility Yoga course to support your body, your mind, and your mental health in 3 important ways: to synchronize your hormones, increase circulation and blood flow, and to help regulate your nervous system. But on top of this, the greatest gift that you can give yourself throughout this journey is a sense of peace, to help you calm your mind and just make this process feel easier. Every single one of my students tell me that this is the first thing they notice after starting a yoga, meditation, and breathwork practice. But on top of this, you have the amazing benefit of actually supporting and increasing your fertility. Studies have shown that those participating in mind-body programs as they're trying to conceive have success rates 3 times greater than those who don't. The course I've designed walks you through natural conception as well as fertility treatments and IVF cycles. And the best part is you can work through it at your own pace in the comfort of your home. The practices start from just 10 minutes per day. To learn more, visit elementpilatesyoga.com or see the link in the show notes.